A terrorist blows up a ferry filled with hundreds of people, but the agent hunting him is about to discover something even more impossible than the attack itself, because while searching for the killer, Doug is shown a secret technology that can see things no one should be able to see, and what he discovers through it changes everything. At first, Doug only wants to find the man responsible, but soon he realizes this machine might give him a chance to do something that should be impossible. The story begins with a scene at a ferry terminal. A large number of people are waiting to board the ferry, and most of them are with their families, including women and children. Everything seems normal at first, and the ferry leaves the terminal. However, as soon as the ferry travels some distance, a massive explosion suddenly occurs. The entire ferry is blown apart and sinks into the water. Everyone on board is killed in the blast. A total of 543 passengers lose their lives, along with 36 crew members. The scene soon turns chaotic as the relatives of the victims arrive at the site. Everyone is devastated by the tragedy, and the entire area is filled with grief and mourning. Meanwhile, the police and rescue teams arrive at the scene and begin searching through the wreckage in an attempt to find survivors. However, they are unable to find anyone alive. Doug, an expert ATF agent, then arrives at the scene and begins investigating the disaster. As he moves through the wreckage, he sees countless dead bodies scattered around the area. He continues searching through the wreckage and reaches the edge of the ferry. He notices a piece of plastic stuck to it. After examining it, Doug realizes that the material could be related to a bomb. He suspects that the explosive might be the type of device generally used for attacks. Doug immediately contacts his team. While he is still at the scene, another ATF agent named Paul arrives. Paul then examines the lower section of the ferry and finds evidence of an explosive device. After seeing the evidence, Doug explains that this type of material is commonly used in bombs. The two agents conclude that the ferry was deliberately bombed and that someone intentionally caused the explosion.
Ammo in the blast underneath this bridge. That's right.
He returns to the ATF office and shows everyone the evidence, confirming that the ferry was destroyed by a bomb. The investigators also learned that a woman had called the someone shortly before the explosion and had been asking about Doug. Doug then returns to the ferry and continues examining the bodies. Just then, he receives a call from his partner, who tells him that they have found the body of a woman named Claire near the shoreline. Half of her body is badly burned, making it appear that she had been on the ferry. Doug asks when Claire died. His partner tells him that she died at 10:42. Doug is shocked because the ferry explosion occurred later. He asks again, and his partner confirms that the time of death is indeed 10:42.
Well, exactly what time did this woman wash up on shore? You mean 11:42, no?
This makes Doug realize that Claire was killed before the ferry exploded. While examining her body, he notices marks on her face and realizes that someone had covered her mouth with tape to prevent her from screaming. His partner then tells him that Claire had been reported missing that morning, and her father was the person who reported her disappearance. Doug starts putting the pieces together. He realizes that someone deliberately killed Claire and then threw her body into the water so that everyone would assume she had died in the ferry explosion. The killer must also have known in advance that the ferry was going to be bombed. Doug then visits Claire's father and asks him several questions about his daughter. Claire's father gives him the key to her house, allowing Doug to search it. When Doug enters Claire's house, he notices several bloodstains. He also finds a man's shirt with blood on it, giving him another important clue about Claire's murder. Doug's attention is then drawn to the refrigerator, where he notices the words, "You can save her," written on it. He immediately becomes suspicious and checks Claire's phone. There, he discovers that Claire had called Doug's office and had been asking about Doug. This leaves Doug shocked, and he cannot understand what is really going on. The investigation also reveals that Claire's car is missing. Doug goes to his superiors and explains everything he has discovered. He tells them that Claire was killed hours before the ferry explosion and that someone had deliberately burned and dumped her body so that everyone would believe she had died in the blast.
Heavy fuel burns, and that's the base explosive used by domestic terrorists. They had to have been killed 2 hours before the ferry exploded.
She died before the explosion.
The killer must have already known that the ferry was going to explode. Doug explains that if they can solve Claire's murder, they may also be able to identify the person responsible for the ferry bombing. After explaining everything, Doug notices his partner's car outside and asks about it. He is told that the car actually belongs to another agent. He then learns something even more disturbing. His partner Larry has also been killed.
Larry Minuti, my partner, that's his car right there.
Vehicles that belonged to the victims.
Sorry.
Doug is deeply shaken by the news and begins to leave. However, Paul speaks to his senior officer and tells him that Doug is an exceptionally talented agent who has already done excellent work on the case. The senior officer agrees and approaches Doug. Doug agrees to work with them, and Paul takes him to a highly secret facility. There, Doug sees an incredible piece of technology. The device allows the investigators to observe footage from different locations in a 360-degree view. They can even hear the sounds from the recorded footage. Doug is amazed by the technology and asks how they can move the footage around like that. Paul explains that the device is highly classified, but it has one major limitation. They can only observe events from 4 days and 6 hours in the past. They cannot see anything that happened before that point, nor can they observe anything happening in the present. The footage also moves forward continuously, meaning they cannot rewind it. Whatever they see can only be viewed once. That is why they need Doug. They believe he has the ability to notice important details immediately and figure out what is happening.
How can you change the angle on footage taken 4.5 days ago?
It's a brand new program. It's called Snow White.
Snow White.
We have exactly one look at any one time.
Paul then asks Doug where he wants to start watching. Doug tells the team to show him the footage from Claire's house. As they watch, they see Claire trying to sell her car. She is arranging a meeting with a potential buyer and discussing the deal over the phone. Afterward, Claire goes to take a shower. When she comes out of the bathroom, she suddenly notices that someone is watching her. She immediately becomes alert and looks around. Doug asks the team whether they can see the person, but they tell him that they cannot. They continue watching Claire as she goes about her day. The following day, Claire goes to the ferry terminal. After leaving the area, the team continues following her movements through the footage. Later, Claire is at a club when she receives a call from a man who wants to buy her car. While she is talking to him, Doug realizes that this could be the same man who planted the bomb. Doug immediately asks the team to determine where the man is calling from. They trace the call and discover that he is calling from a nearby location. The team begins checking the cameras around that area. They eventually find footage from a nearby camera, but they are unable to identify the man's face. However, they notice the bag he is carrying. Doug asks them to scan the bag and compare it with the bags belonging to the people who were on the ferry. After running the comparison, they find a match. This confirms that the same man was present on the ferry and is likely responsible for the bombing.
We have facial recognition software?
Yeah.
Let's use it on the bag, cross-match it to all the bags on the south side of the city in the 48 hours leading up to the explosion, all right?
However, they still cannot see his face because the system has not yet reached the required point in the timeline. They have to wait another 7 hours before they can observe that particular moment. Everyone waits for the 7 hours to pass, but Doug becomes increasingly frustrated. Then he notices a laser device. When the team starts the system again, Doug uses the laser to point toward Claire's position on the screen. Suddenly, the entire system reacts. Doug becomes furious and accuses the team of lying to him. They had previously told him that Claire could not see them, yet she has now clearly reacted to the laser. Doug realizes that what he is watching is not simply a recording. He demands the truth. The team finally explains that there is no recording device involved and that the screen is not playing a normal video. Instead, the machine is actually allowing them to look into the past. They explain that time continuously moves forward, while the past remains behind. The device creates a connection between the present and a specific point in the past, allowing them to observe events that have already happened. Doug then asks one important question. If they can observe the past, can they change it? The team tells him that they have already tried to do so, but whatever they attempted had consequences they could not control. The team explains that whenever they try to send something back through time, the person's heart stops and they die. They have already tried sending several living subjects, but every attempt has failed. Doug then asks whether they can send a note instead. The team says that they can, although they do not know exactly where the note should be sent. Doug tells them to send it to him and explains where he was at that particular moment. He writes down everything he needs to know so that he can prevent the bombing. However, by the time the team sends the note, Doug has already left that location. A moment later, his partner Larry finds the note. After reading it, Larry realizes that there is a serious danger and starts moving away. Meanwhile, the team finally gets a clear look at the man responsible for the bombing. They match his face through the system and identify him.
That's him.
There he is. All right, take your time.
Stay on him.
Larry reaches the man's location and points a gun at him, ordering him to get out of his vehicle. However, the man suddenly shoots Larry. He then puts Larry's body inside his vehicle and drives away. The team continues watching him through the device, but they soon reach the limit of the area they can observe. The man has driven beyond the device's current range, so they realize that they need to physically move the equipment closer to his location. Doug tells them to take the device with him. The team loads it into a vehicle and heads toward the location where the man has taken Larry. They manage to reconnect the system and continue observing everything. Doug is now watching events from approximately 4 days and 6 hours in the past, while also being able to see what is happening around him in the present. Eventually, the team reaches a deserted location where the man has taken Larry. They watch as the man pulls Larry out of his vehicle and places him on the ground. Doug sees that Larry is still alive. The man then shoots Larry and burns his body. Everyone watching the scene is devastated. They had already sent the warning note back in time, yet Larry still dies, although he dies in a completely different way. This makes Doug realize that simply changing one event does not necessarily prevent the future from unfolding. The system finally matches the man's face and reveals his identity. His name is Carol Orstad. The team quickly discovers his address and sends police officers to arrest him. The police soon capture Carol and bring him in for questioning. During the interrogation, Doug learns that Carol is a psycho and has been trying to join the military for a long time. He has applied to several branches, including the Navy and the Marines, but has been rejected every time. Doug asks Carol whether he knows why he keeps getting rejected. Carol replies that the military does not want someone like him. He claims that they want people who are willing to follow orders rather than patriots.
Why would you use explosives against the U.S. Navy?
U.S. government.
U.S. government. You try to enlist in the Army, you were rejected again.
Doug realizes that Carol's anger and resentment toward the military may be connected to the murders he has committed. After learning this, the investigation takes another major turn. Doug is then approached by another officer, who tells him that they are officially closing the case. He says that Doug is free to leave because the bomber has already been caught. Doug refuses to accept this. He tells the officer that the case is not over because the ferry bombing has not been prevented yet. The officer tells him that there is no way they can stop the blast anymore. As far as he is concerned, they have identified and arrested the man responsible, so the investigation is finished. But Doug has only one goal now. He wants to save Claire. He contacts the team operating the time machine and tells them that he wants to go back in time himself. The team tries to convince him that sending a human being through the machine is extremely dangerous and could cost him his life. Doug insists that he has to go. He believes that if he can travel back far enough, he can save Claire and prevent the deaths of all 543 passengers on the ferry. The team finally agrees to send him back. They decide to send him directly to the operating room so that the doctors can immediately treat him if something goes wrong.
Gotta keep the mask as low as possible. You gotta take everything off. Keep your underwear on.
Thank you very much.
You ready?
Yeah, I'm ready.
All right. See you yesterday.
God willing.
Doug is sent through the machine and appears directly inside the operating room. The doctors immediately rush to him and try to revive him. They discover that Doug has a serious injury to his chest, but they manage to save his life. After some time, Doug regains consciousness. However, he knows that he has very little time. He immediately leaves the hospital because he has to find Claire and stop the bombing. Doug already knows that Claire is about to be killed by Carol. He also knows where Carol is taking her, so he gets into an ambulance and rushes toward the location. When Carol sees the ambulance approaching, he starts shooting at it. Doug arrives at the scene and pulls Claire out of the vehicle. Carol continues firing at them, trying to kill both of them. Doug manages to escape with Claire, while Carol's entire vehicle and the surrounding area are destroyed in a massive explosion. Doug then takes Claire to safety. She is confused and frightened, so Doug tries to calm her down. He tells her that she is safe and that he is an ATF agent, so she has nothing to fear. As they drive away, Claire asks Doug who the man was. Doug explains that the man is a terrorist who is planning to carry out a massive bombing on the ferry at 10:50. He tells her that he has to stop him before the explosion happens. Doug then takes Claire to her house and writes on the refrigerator, "You can save her." The same words Doug saw earlier in the story. However, Doug is badly injured from the gunshot wound, and he begins cleaning himself up. Suddenly, Claire points a gun at him. She demands to know who he really is. She tells him that he somehow knows everything about her, including details about her house and where everything is located. She also suspects that Doug may have been the person who kidnapped her. Doug denies it. He tells her that the man who kidnapped her was someone else and that she had seen his face. He identifies himself as an ATF agent and asks her to trust him. Claire asks Doug if she can call his office to verify his identity. She calls the ATF office and asks about Doug, but the officers there are confused by her questions. They tell her that Doug has been working on the case, but they cannot understand why she is asking about him. Claire becomes even more confused. She tells Doug that she cannot understand what is happening or how he knows so much about her.
Agent Douglas Carlin working out of that branch.
6'3", black, not bad.
Why you're here, why this is happening.
Just then, Doug's phone rings. He tells Claire that the ferry is about to leave. He knows she still does not completely trust him, but he explains everything he knows about her death and the events that are about to happen. Doug then takes Claire toward the ferry terminal. He tells Claire to go to the guards and inform them that Carol's car contains a bomb. He then kisses Claire goodbye and heads toward the car. Meanwhile, Carol is also heading toward the ferry. When he sees Claire's car, he realizes that Doug and Claire have arrived. He suspects that they may have discovered his plan and quickly heads toward the ferry. Doug reaches the car and is about to get inside when Carol suddenly appears and starts shooting at them. Claire immediately runs toward Doug to help him, but Carol catches her. He puts tape over her mouth and places her inside a vehicle that is loaded with explosives. Carol then orders Doug to come out. Doug steps outside, but secretly signals Claire to drive the vehicle. Claire understands the signal. She starts the car and drives straight toward Carol, running him over and killing him. Doug then gets inside the vehicle. By this time, police officers have arrived and surround them. They order Doug and Claire to get out. Doug knows they have almost no time left. He drives toward the water and takes the vehicle underwater. The car continues moving through the water as Doug tries to get it as far away from the ferry as possible. Doug breaks the windshield and Claire manages to escape through the broken glass. However, before Doug can get out, the vehicle flips over and traps him inside. Claire reaches safety, but by then, the timer runs out. A massive explosion occurs underwater, killing Doug. However, because Doug has successfully moved the vehicle away from the ferry, everyone on board survives. The 543 passengers and the crew are safe. Claire is devastated because she has lost Doug, the man who sacrificed his life to save her and everyone else. As Claire stands there mourning Doug, a police officer approaches her and tells her that the police will now take care of everything. Claire then suddenly sees Doug walking in the distance. She is surprised to see him, but that Doug is from another timeline, and he has no idea what has happened in the original timeline. He then takes Claire with him to record her statement. On the way, Claire asks him a strange question. She asks what he would do if she told him something that he could not believe. Doug replies that he would simply try to understand it. Doug then looks at her and says that he feels like they have met before. Claire confirms it, leaving the ending open and mysterious. And with that, the story comes to an end.